to lesson 2 on break-even. We're on component 3 aim C. We're now looking at the other way of calculating and viewing and analysing break-even by looking at it through charts. So this is our second lesson. The intentions are very much the same as we started in lesson 1. We're looking at constructing and interpreting a break-even chart. We're looking at making sure you know the costs involved in the lines on the break-even chart and being able to plot the break-even chart. So the steps are knowing break-even, calculating it, and then being able to plot it. And we've got some different jobs for you to think about at the bottom: compliance officer, workflow manager, and UX designer. UX is user experience. Your work list for lesson 2. The first task is quite straightforward. It's making sure you understand the definition and the formula of break-even. And then tasks 2 and 3, whilst it looks like it's only 2 more tasks, there's quite a bit of practice on making sure you can calculate and draw and plot the break-even charts to make sure that's super secure for you. Definition and calculating the break-even point. Now remember, break-even is an important calculation. This is because it tells the owners of an enterprise exactly how many products they must produce and sell before they can start to make a profit. The benefit of using a break-even analysis is that it always allows the owner to answer what if questions. What if I produce that much? How much profit would I need to make? What if I change my costs? What would happen? So let's revisit the formula. Break-even output equals fixed costs divided by brackets selling price minus variable cost, close brackets. If you like that in an algebraic form, that's FC over brackets SP minus VC, close brackets. Here's an example as a quick double check so that you know we've worked it out and we've got it accurate. If fixed costs are £2,000 and selling price per unit is £4, variable cost per unit is £2, what is break-even point? So let's go. First we need to do the brackets. Sales price per unit is £4 minus the £2 of variable cost. The answer is £2. Look, the numbers aren't going to be tricky for you. And then you divide £2 into £2,000 and the answer is 1,000. Question is it £1,000 or 1,000 units, or as in products? Now remember, break-even is, to go back to the top, it's the amount that an owner of a company needs to sell in order to cover their costs. So what are they selling? They're not exactly selling money, are they? They're selling their products. So the answer is units, a different word for products. We can't say products because we haven't got a clue what the products are, and it might not even be a product. They might be selling a service. So we use the generic term units. The answer for break-even point is always in units, never pounds. Here is a break-even chart. Let's go through the names of all the labels because this is what you're going to be expected to be able to do in the exam. The green line, it's fixed costs. It's a straight line because, as the word says, it's fixed. It's a fixed cost. Doesn't change. The red line, total costs. Please note where that starts. It starts on top of fixed costs because, as it says, it's total costs. The area represented by the curly whirly bracket, which is above fixed costs and in between fixed and total cost, is known as variable cost. The purple line, this is total revenue. This starts at 0, and as you can see it goes upwards because it assumes that the company makes money. So it starts at 0, and as it goes up across the x-axis, the company makes more and more money. This point here, the point at which purple total revenue and red total cost cross each other. What is that point? That is the point where the company starts earning more money than they're actually spending on their costs. That is the point where the lines cross over. That is known as break-even point. What do we call the area that is above total costs and total revenue? That's where the company is making a profit. That's where they'd like to be. So what do we call the area when costs are higher than revenue, when the red line is above the purple line? Well, we call that area making a loss. The company hasn't yet made a profit, so they're making a loss. Their costs are higher. And let's not forget that those areas sitting quietly on the break-even chart, the x-axis monitors the output and the y-axis demonstrates costs. So let's put all of this talk into action. Lucy has started to construct a break-even chart below. It's your job to now finish it. Your job is to move all these labels below into the correct boxes onto the chart. The first one's been done for you to start you off. Question 2. Tyler did some research and he changed his cost and selling price for the wedding photography service. Based on the information that he has gathered, he constructs a break-even chart. Question 2. Identify what the area labelled X with the red area represents. Question 3. Identify what the area labelled Y represents. That's the green area. And identify what the area labelled Z, that's the straight line, represents. Question 5a. Jasmina wants to calculate the number of domestic customer jobs that she needs to take on to break even. She gives you the following information about these jobs. So you've got the cost and revenue information of Jasmina's domestic customers in the table below. First of all, the question is asking you, what is the formula to calculate revenue? So actually, you just asked to remember a formula, so fill in the box on the left. 5b of the question will be asking you to plot the information onto the chart on the next slide. So just to remind you, here are the colour codes of each. In green, it's fixed costs. Recommend starting the green line first in all break-even charts. Next, I recommend doing the red line, total costs. After all, you start this total cost line above the fixed cost line. And finally, the revenue line, and you'll have to work out the calculations per number of jobs in order for you to get the final numbers so you know what to plot onto the break-even chart. Question 5b. Draw in the break-even chart lines from your 5a calculations on the last slide and move the labels below to their correct places. So you'll need to flick back to the last slide and you'll need to, I recommend doing it in this order. Remember, if you don't have any graph paper, use lined file paper for the horizontal lines and drawing the vertical lines, or pause the video on this slide and do a print screen and print it, and if you have access to a printer. Your first task should be fixed costs. So if you look back on the last slide, you will see fixed cost at 4,000. So costs, which side are you looking at? Are you looking at the x-axis of output? Oh look, perhaps you need to move the yellow labels first. Or are you looking at the y-axis of cost? Boom! There's a little bit of a clue. So you find the 4,000 and you draw your first line and label your first line, and then your next one I would recommend you do would be total costs, and for sake of argument we'll call that the red line. So you find the 4,000. I recommend you plot each of the numbers, and then you can actually see where the line's going, because perhaps it hasn't actually given you all the numbers. And then the final bit, you actually need to do the purple, the revenue, and you do need both sets of numbers, because you're looking at the output, the number of jobs, to find the number on the x-axis, say for 100, which is the first number of jobs, and then you go along up the y-axis to find 3,000, and then the point which to me is the point which you mark it with an X, and off you go, you keep going, and then hopefully you'll then draw the line, and this one might give you an unusual result. Question 6a. Lewis is thinking about offering an early diner special on weekday evenings. He wants you to check the break-even point before he makes a final decision, and has given you the following information. So here you go. This is what I was talking about as a what if. A business owner would work this out to see what they need to do and how many they need to sell in order to actually break even and start making profit. Here's a what if scenario. So the costs you've got are, the figures rather you've got are total fixed cost per week £300, average variable cost of £10 per early diner special, and a sales price of £20 per early diner special. Lewis believes that he could sell up to 50 early diner specials a week. Your job, first of all, is to complete the table below. You've got 3 columns to fill in. The costs at not selling any, the 0 column. The costs of selling 25 early diner specials, and the costs of selling 50. You've got 4 pieces of data in each one, and that'll give you 12 points. Well, here's the chart for Lewis, and we need to start plotting things. I'll make things easier. I'll move the first 3 for you. It's title and the x-axis and the y-axis labels. That leaves you with 3 lines. That leaves you with fixed cost. Now remember where that starts. It told you in the first bullet point where that starts, so guess what, that's a straight line, and I've kept the colour code green. The next one is total cost, and that's what you needed to add variable and fixed together, and that starts on top of fixed costs, so it's going to start at 300. And then the last one you need to work out is revenue, and to start off with, he sells none, so it starts at 0, 0. And then you need to plot each line upwards, so don't forget to use the X's, and here's a few on the sheet for you. To be nice and helpful, I've plotted the first 3 X's for you. Question 7. TPB Limited is also thinking about offering a family deal. This would include a game of bowling plus a choice of snack for a family of 4. You have been asked to check the break-even point before a final decision is made, and you have been given the following information. Fixed cost £180 per week, variable cost £6 per family, and the family deal £15 per family. TBB Limited believes that it could sell up to 60 family deals a week, and your job is to work out whether that's accurate, whether it's true. So you're on another what if question. So before you plot the chart on the next slide, you first need to work out the numbers. So we need to complete the table below. Looking at the first column that you need to complete, where there are no family deals, then you've got no sales, no variable costs. The fixed costs are given to you, so you need to complete the total cost. You then have 25 family deals columns to complete and the 50 columns deals to complete. Now remember, you're going to need the chart on this one because the family believe that they might need to produce 60 family deals a week in order to break even. So either your chart's going to help you, or you might even have to add an extra column onto this to get to the 60. Let's wait and see what the figures produce for us. You need to calculate the numbers for TBP Limited for their family deals, and when you've got the information, you can then try and plot the graph. Remember to start with fixed costs, because that's one's given to you on the last slide, and that's £180. And remember that it stays the same because it says fixed. Now on here you've got 5 mini squares, so if you've got £100 and £200 of 5 mini squares, then each represents 20, so that's where you've got to find the line. If you don't have line paper, then the little guidelines just says use normal file paper and draw some of your vertical lines that you need. So let's first do the fixed cost line, and I'll add in some of the freebie ones for you as well, leaving your final 3 that you need to sort. Here are some X's to help you out, and here are your first 3 marks on the chart. First 3 X's plotted onto the chart for you for fixed cost at 180, total cost because that's where it starts, and revenue at the bottom. Question 8a. Sita and Charlie have sent you the following monthly cost information. Loan repayment £450, coffee beans £100, milk sugar syrup £75, insurance £150, and sundries, things like cups, lids, are £50. Using the tables below, this blue one and the orange one, you need to calculate the monthly fixed and variable costs. So first of all, you've got to organise which are fixed costs and which are variable costs, and then you've got to turn them into a monthly figure. So this is about, first of all, our first step is understanding what is a fixed cost and what is a variable cost. So fixed, has it got anything to do with making the product? Let's go through that list. A loan, is that specifically about making a coffee? Coffee beans, is that specifically about making a coffee? I think that says something. Yeah, okay, get it. Milk sugar syrup, that could be things like flavoured syrups, we won't separate it. Milk sugar syrup, has that got anything to do with making a coffee? Insurance, does that specifically relate to a cup of coffee? Sundries, they're giving you an explanation of what sundries mean, things like cups, lids, probably spoons, plastic spoons. Does that relate specifically to the cup of coffee? So there you go. I reckon 2 in the blue and the rest in the orange. Question 8b. Sita and Charlie forecast that up to 1,000 people a month will buy a cup of coffee at £2.20. They've given you some costs and revenue information to use when drawing a break-even graph. Your first job is to complete the table. Now, a lot of the information was on the 8a slide, on the last slide, but if you look at the table, it's actually quite straightforward. You've got the fixed costs line to complete, so have a real think about that one, what you need to put in the 500 cups of coffee column and the 1,000. And then when you've done that, you've got total costs, which is fixed plus variable. So you don't really need to flick back at all. You can actually fill in the 500 and 1,000 cups of coffee columns based on everything you've got in front of you. Please remember that if you don't have any graph paper, then use lined file paper for the horizontal lines and draw in some halfway ones if you can. And you can then draw in your vertical lines to actually make your X and Y axes. Or if you can, pause the video on this slide, print screen and print it so you can have access, if you have access to a printer. So your job is to draw the break-even chart based on the figures from 8b. I will put the first 3 freebies in for you right now. Your task is to map the data onto the graph so that you can actually draw the break-even chart. So to start you off, I'll give you the first 3 plotting points. Question 9A. BTD Limited forecasts that at least 15 customers a month will use the proposed property management cleaning service. The business has given you some forecast costs and revenue information to use when drawing a break-even chart for its first month of operating the property management cleaning service. Fixed costs are £1,200 per month. Revenue is £180 each house, and variable costs are £30 each house. Your first job is to complete the table below so you've got an idea of the costs that you need to calculate and therefore plot on the chart on the next slide. Here's a few hints and tips for you to get going. You've got a fixed cost. Always start with fixed cost. You can put that straight across on the table. Then on the number of houses, you start off with no houses cleaned. So you've got no variable cost, no sales revenue, so your fixed cost, boom, straightforward. You've finished the first column. The second number to input would be at 5 houses cleaned. You've got a sales revenue of 900, a variable cost of 150 and a missing fixed cost, but you have the total cost answer. So just add them all up and check that that is the right total costs. And then you've got the numbers to calculate going across. So if you've got 10 houses that you're cleaning, then you have a revenue which is £180 a house. So you've got a multiplication that goes in there, and if it costs you £30 per house and you only do 10 houses, you've got 10 times the variable cost, and likewise on the final fourth column. (9B) then is the plotting the break-even chart. So based on the figures on 9A, you now need to plot the numbers so that you can then forecast and use it as a break-even analysis tool. If you don't have any graph paper, then not to worry. Please use lined file paper and use the horizontal lines and draw some halfway ones. We can estimate. Or if you can, you have access to a printer, pause the video on this slide, print screen, and then you've got a print of the graph paper. Here are your first 3 labels done for you. So hopefully they're becoming familiar in terms of what you should write on a break-even chart. And here are your first 3 numbers plotted onto the chart for fixed costs in green, total costs in red, and revenue in purple. Question 10A, final question for lesson 2. Millie is looking at the sales forecast for the sales of classic waffles. She has given you some cost and revenue information to use when drawing a break-even chart. Variable cost 50p, total fixed cost per month £800, and sales price of the classic waffle £2.20. Millie forecasts that up to 1,000 people a month will buy a classic waffle at £2.20. I don't blame her, waffles are nice. Your first job is to complete the table of all the costs below for the revenue and cost for classic waffles. Now there's no starters in here, so we need to remember what we've learnt so far, that if you've got no waffles sold, then sales revenue would be variable costs, because that's the cost per product that you sold but you haven't sold any, so that would be okay, and fixed costs, which you have been given, it's in the table above, which is £800. So we've got fixed plus variable costs equals, and there's £800. Now the one I've always told you to do straight away is fixed costs. You've got a number there and fixed costs, put that straight across on the no sales, 500 waffle sales, and the 1,000 waffle sales. Now we've got the fixed costs sorted. We're looking at sales revenue. So you've got sales price per waffle, classic waffle, is £2.20. So you've got 500 waffles sold at £2.20. There we go, it's a multiplication. In the variable cost, you've got 500 waffles sold, and it costs you 50p per classic waffle to make. So 500 multiplied by 50p, there we go. You've got your fixed cost in there, so you know what to do for total costs. And And the final column is for 1,000 classic waffles, that's 1,000. So you've got 1,000 classic waffles multiplied by the £2.20 for your sales revenue, and then you've got 1,000 classic waffles multiplied by the 50p for your variable cost. And remember, don't get misled by the decimal point there. Fixed cost as you've done, and then you total variable and fixed for your total costs. Your job is to put the labels in the right place, so let's move the easy 3 to start off with. And to start you off, let's plot the fixed cost, total cost and revenue. Your final task is to plot the remaining numbers onto the chart and draw in the fixed cost line, the total cost line and the revenue line, so that you can calculate and visually see the break-even point for the classic waffles shop. Well done, you've reached the end of lesson 2. Whilst it looked like a short work list, you have completed it. I think you have completely understood how to plot the lines on a break even, the green fixed cost, the red total cost and the purple revenue. I hope those colours are going to be there with you when you take your exam, and that will be the break even chart when you know those colour codes. Well done, you've reached the end of lesson 2.